The rain pounded against the castle walls, a relentless drumbeat of doom. Inside, the halls of the royal palace were dimly lit, the flickering torches casting eerie shadows on the walls. It was a night of secrets, a night when whispers could bring down kingdoms. Elizabeth, the new Queen of England, sat alone in her chambers, her hands trembling as she held a letter. The words were blurred by her tears, but she could still make out the chilling message. Catherine Carey is the daughter of Henry VIII. The revelation was a bombshell, a threat to everything Elizabeth had worked for. If the world knew that Catherine was the king's illegitimate child, it would cast a dark shadow over Elizabeth's own legitimacy. Her enemies, already numerous, would pounce, using this secret to undermine her rule and challenge her claim to the throne. Elizabeth's heart raced. She had always known that her own status as the daughter of Anne Boleyn, declared illegitimate by her father, was a weakness, but this was something far more dangerous. Catherine Carey, her childhood friend and confidante, was a living reminder of the scandal that had clouded her mother's name, and by extension, her own. Catherine and her brother, Henry Carey, had always been a part of Elizabeth's life, but now their presence felt like a ticking time bomb. If the truth ever came to light, it could spark a rebellion, a coup, or worse. Elizabeth had to act quickly and decisively to protect her reign and her family. The next morning, Elizabeth summoned her most trusted advisers. William Cecil, her chief minister, and Robert Dudley, her close friend and confidante, entered the chamber, their faces grave. Elizabeth wasted no time in sharing the letter and its explosive contents. "This cannot be allowed to become public," Elizabeth said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "We must protect Catherine and Henry, but more importantly, we must protect the stability of this realm." Cecil nodded, his mind already racing with plans. "We will need to be discreet, Your Majesty. The Careys must be kept close, but their true parentage must remain a secret." Dudley, ever the loyal supporter, added, "We must also strengthen your position. The Protestant settlement of 1559 is crucial. We cannot allow the foundations of the English Reformation to be undermined." Elizabeth agreed, her resolve hardening. "I will not let my enemies use this to tear apart what we have built. Catherine and Henry will be my cousins, nothing more. Their true lineage will remain hidden, and I will do everything in my power to ensure that it stays that way." As the advisers left the chamber, Elizabeth felt a weight on her shoulders. The burden of kingship was heavy, and the secrets she carried only made it heavier. But she was not one to back down from a challenge. She would protect her throne, her family, and her legacy, no matter the cost. Outside, the rain continued to fall, a constant reminder of the storm that raged within the palace walls. Elizabeth knew that the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but she was ready to face it. For in the world of Tudor politics, only the strong survived. Lord Hunsdon, a man of great importance in the court of Queen Elizabeth I, was given a fitting farewell in one of the most prestigious places in England, Westminster Abbey. His tomb, located in St. John the Baptist's Chapel, stands as a testament to his status and the affection the Queen held for him. This grand monument, towering at 36 feet, was built by his widow, Anne, and his heir, George Carey. Despite what some writers claim, the Queen did not pay for the tomb herself, though she did provide a generous sum for his funeral, a clear sign of her deep regard for him. The tomb is an elaborate structure, crafted from marble and alabaster, painted in black and white and gilded with gold. It features a sarcophagus in an arched recess, framed by classical columns, trophies, pedestals, and obelisks. The heraldic shields display the Boleyn bull and falcon, symbols of his family's lineage. The underside of the arch is decorated with Tudor roses, similar to those found on Queen Elizabeth's own tomb. At the center, the Carey arms are prominently displayed, topped by a domed and balustraded pavilion supporting a swan. The only thing missing is an effigy of Lord Hunsdon himself. The inscription on the tomb reads, Sepulchri Familiae de Hunsdon Consecratum, which translates to, dedicated to the burial of the family of Hunsdon. This use of his title, rather than his family name, was common for members of the peerage. Lord Hunsdon's legacy continued through his children. His eldest son, George Carey, inherited his title and died in 1603, the same year as Queen Elizabeth I. George's brother, John, became the third Baron Hunsdon and held the title until his death in 1617. The title then passed to John's son, Henry, who was also elevated to Viscount Rochford by King James I in 1621. However, the line ended in 1677, when Henry's son, John, died without male heirs. One of Lord Hunsdon's daughters, Catherine Carey, Countess of Nottingham, was involved in a famous legend. According to the story, she was said to have kept the Essex ring from Queen Elizabeth, a ring the Queen had given to her favorite, Robert de Veru, Earl of Essex. Essex had been instructed to send the ring to the Queen, if he ever found himself in trouble. When Essex was arrested for treason in 1600, he sent the ring to Lady Nottingham, hoping she would deliver it to the Queen. However, Lady Nottingham, under the influence of Robert Cecil, did not pass the ring along. On her deathbed in 1603, she supposedly confessed to the Queen, who, in her anger, is said to have shaken Lady Nottingham in her bed, saying, "God may forgive you, but I never can." Despite this legend, the ring did exist, and it was later placed near Queen Elizabeth's tomb. The story, however, is more myth than fact, and the Queen genuinely mourned Lady Nottingham's passing, which may have hastened her own death. The Carey family played a significant role in the Tudor and early Stuart periods. Two of Mary Boleyn's grandchildren, Robert Carey and Philadelphia Carey, supported Queen Elizabeth during her final illness. Another legend claims that when Elizabeth died in 1603, Philadelphia Carey removed her coronation ring and dropped it from a window to Robert Carey, who then rode to Scotland to inform King James VI of his accession. While the ring was indeed taken from the Queen, the story is likely exaggerated, and Carey did carry it to Scotland. Catherine Carey, the daughter of Francis Knollys and Mary Boleyn, had a close relationship with Queen Elizabeth. She and her husband, Francis, had 16 children, though only 15 are depicted on their tomb at Rotherfield Grays. The missing daughter was likely stillborn or died in infancy, which is why she was not included in her father's records. Catherine's brother, William, was also a prominent figure at court. When Edward VI became king in 1547, Francis Knollys distinguished himself in the war against Scotland and was knighted. However, during Queen Mary I's reign, the Knollyses, being Protestants, had to flee to the continent. Catherine and her family returned to England when Elizabeth I ascended the throne in 1558. Catherine was appointed a Lady of the Privy Chamber and later became the Chief Lady of the Bedchamber, a position of great trust and influence. Catherine's relationship with the Queen was deep and enduring. Elizabeth granted her and her son, Robert the Manor of Taunton for life in 1560. When Catherine's health declined, Elizabeth was deeply concerned and had her moved to a bedchamber near her own. Despite Elizabeth's love for Catherine, she often demanded her constant presence, even when Catherine was ill. This strain, combined with the demands of raising a large family, took a toll on Catherine's health. She passed away in 1569 at the age of 43, greatly mourned by the Queen. Elizabeth arranged for a grand funeral, spending a significant sum on the obsequies, and had Catherine buried in St. Edmund's Chapel in Westminster Abbey. Catherine's eldest son, Henry, was held in high esteem by the Queen, who wrote of her good reason to favor him, in respect of his kindred to us by his late mother. Her eldest daughter, Lettice, also known as Letitia, became a lady-in-waiting and a close friend of the Queen until her secret marriage to Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, in 1578, which led to her banishment from court. The Carey family's influence continued into the Stuart period, but the senior line died out in 1677. However, the legacy of Mary Boleyn and William Carey lives on through their numerous descendants, including many notable figures in British history. In the world of history, portraits are like time machines, offering a glimpse into the past. One such portrait, often mistaken for Mary Boleyn, has sparked much debate. The woman in the painting has a round face, a prominent nose and chin, large dark eyes, and a small mouth with rosebud lips. Her well-defined, light brown eyebrows frame her eyes, while her hair is hidden under a hood. She wears a black velvet, square-necked gown with a red border and ermine trim, and a short gable hood, popular in the 1530s. The hood's veil is thrown over the top in a whelk shell style. Around her neck, she wears a double rope of pearls with a lozenge-shaped pendant, and on her breast, an oval pendant with a drop pearl, topped by a leafy sprig with 2 small roses or carnation. This portrait is rich in detail, but it tells more about the sitter's status than her identity. The ermine trim on her gown and sleeves is a clue that she is someone of high rank, as ermine was reserved for royalty and peers of the realm. Mary Boleyn, who was the wife of a commoner, would not have been allowed to wear such a luxurious fur. The fact that multiple versions of this portrait exist, with two in the royal collection, suggests that the sitter was a person of great importance, likely a member of the royal family. Mary Boleyn, despite her connection to the royal court through her sister Anne, was not held in high regard. She was often in obscurity or disgrace, and there would have been little reason to commission her portrait in the 1530s. The jewelry in the portrait is not distinct enough to provide a clear clue, but the sitter appears to be in her teens or 20s. She doesn't match the known portraits of Catherine of Aragon, Henry VIII's sister Mary Tudor, or Anne Boleyn. This leaves a few possibilities: Frances Brandon, Eleanor Brandon, and Lady Margaret Douglas. Frances Brandon, Henry VIII's niece, was married in 1533 when she was 16. Eleanor Brandon married in 1537, at the age of 18. Margaret Douglas, a close friend of Princess Mary, was sent to the Tower in 1536 at the age of 21. Each of these women could have been the sitter, but the only certain portraits of them are from much later in their lives, making direct comparison difficult. The portrait's details, such as the large nose and chin, and the setting of the eyes and eyebrows, bear a striking resemblance to the Brandon family, suggesting that the sitter might be Frances Brandon. Frances was the king's niece and the daughter of one of the most important peers in England, which would explain the ermine and the multiple copies of the portrait. But how did this portrait come to be associated with Mary Boleyn? For centuries, names were often inscribed on portraits based on flimsy evidence. Once a wrong name was attached, it could easily spread, and the false identity became accepted as true. The name Mary Boleyn on this portrait was added much later, likely by someone who made an incorrect assumption. There is also a portrait of Mary Boleyn's first husband, William Carey, which has its own intriguing history. This unfinished portrait, once in the collection of Henry of Fitzhugh, shows a young, attractive man with brown hair, a short beard, a strong nose, and eyes that resemble those of his Tudor relatives. He holds a book, suggesting he wanted to be seen as learned or pious. The portrait was overpainted in the 16th century and later restored, revealing an underpainting of a woman's head that resembles a Holbein drawing of a lady of the Zouch family. Some experts, like David Starkey, believe this portrait of William Carey might have been painted by Hans Holbein, who was in England during the 1520s and 1530s. The quality of the painting and the realistic features support this theory. The portrait was identified as William Carey in 1959, based on a coat of arms on a later Elizabethan portrait, which incorrectly dated the painting to 1526. However, tree ring dating shows the portrait was actually painted between 1575 and 1590, likely commissioned by William Carey's son, Henry Lord Hunsdon, for his long gallery at Brooke House in Hackney. Another portrait, a miniature by Lucas Hornbout, has been suggested to depict Mary Boleyn. The sitter wears the costume of the early to mid-1520s, and holds a brooch that some believe represents a kneeling woman, symbolizing marriage. The miniature is inscribed with the sitter's age, suggesting she was 25 at the time. If Mary Boleyn was born around 1500, she would have been in her mid-20s in the mid-1520s, making her a possible candidate. However, the identity of the sitter remains uncertain, as early miniatures were rare and usually reserved for royalty. The mystery of the Mary Boleyn portrait and the portraits of her family members highlight the challenges of historical research. While these portraits offer tantalizing glimpses into the past, they also remind us that the truth is often more complex than it seems. The women and men in these paintings were real people, with their own stories and identities waiting to be uncovered. As we close this book, we find ourselves standing at the edge of a mystery, gazing into the past through the lens of a small, intricate portrait. The existence of more than one version of this portrait hints at something special. Perhaps the person in the painting was someone of great importance, someone whose image was valued enough to be replicated. One theory is that a second miniature might have been made for William Carey, a well-connected courtier. The story we've explored has also led us to a possible connection between the artist, Lucas Hornbout, and the Boleyn family. Hornbout became the king's painter in 1531, at a time when Anne Boleyn was gaining the king's favor. Just 3 years later, on the day before her brother George Boleyn received a significant title, Hornbout's position was confirmed. This timing seems more than just a coincidence, suggesting a close relationship between the artist and the Boleyns. However, even with all the clues we've uncovered, the identity of the person in the portrait remains a question. We can speculate and draw connections, but without more evidence, we can't say for sure who this person was. The mystery continues, inviting us to keep searching, to keep wondering, and to keep piecing together the fragments of history that have been left to us. In the end, the portrait is more than just a picture. It's a window into a world of intrigue, power, and artistry, a world that still holds its secrets tightly. And perhaps, in the pursuit of these secrets, we find a deeper understanding of the people who lived in that world and the lives they led. The journey doesn't end here. It's just the beginning of a new quest for knowledge.